The regular practice of arpeggios is just as important as daily work on scales. The shifts will, of course, be wider than in scales, and one has to think more of groupings across the string. This will entail assigning a specific place to the thumb in every new position, in contrast to the trailing thumb in the scales. Arpeggios allow us to check the pitch through double stops, not just with open strings. Again, the possibilities of fingerings are manifold, depending on the musical context. But for a swift, even triad, I like the regularity of 3/6 chords using the same pattern. The 3 top notes can be played with 1, 2, 3 or 1, 2, 4, depending on how high the key takes us and on the size of the player's hand. In contrast to scales, I like to start 4-octave arpeggios in all keys on their root notes, as indicated at the bottom of page 50. The resulting increased familiarity with the upper C string will come in handy in such passages as the one from the Kodai Sonata, for which I shall omit in the middle of our talk the required retuning of the low strings. After the preliminary exercises on pages 48 and 49 have been mastered, I advise you to go to page 73, where I have specified each placement of the thumb, although it remains only a silent root finger, and the testing of all possible double stops. Once we are familiar with the whole sequence, it won't take very long to go through major and minor triads, 6 chords and 6/4 chords, and augmented, diminished, and dominant 7th chords. But no matter how intensely we work on it, we could hardly spend our practice time better than to use this as a daily routine. An accomplished pianist can sit down at the piano and without any warm-up race immaculately through a series of arpeggios. We cellists cannot indulge in such luxuries. We must take the time to scrutinize our intonation microscopically. First we check the pitch in the above version of tested thumbs and double stops, then go to an evenly vibrated and articulated moderately fast slurring of 6 notes. And if we have survived this far, we may then play 12 slurred rapid notes up and down. There's no denying the fact that we feel more comfortable with arpeggios that place the first finger a whole step from the thumb, as in major triads, than with the crowded first and far off third fingers in a minor triad. Nonetheless, we have to come to terms with both versions, using that deft maneuvering of which I spoke a while back that allows for fleshy fingertips. An example of widespread first and third fingers occurs near the beginning of the Schumann concerto. Small hands will never achieve a clear articulation with this fingering, and we'll have to try another one, perhaps like this. In Incidentally, Schumann's rhythm, with all short notes placed after the second beat, seems to be beyond the possibilities of digital execution and oral comprehension. I suggest anticipating the second beat with a 16th note on the D, following by a quintuplet on the beat. Even that will not come out clearly unless we use very little bow and an even bow pressure right through the bow change. The same holds true for the scales at the end of the first solo. We must remember never to use a fast bow speed or diminish the intensity when we change the bow on small note values. Now to another arpeggio with a potentially awkward half step between thumb and first finger. In the last movement of Beethoven's triple concerto, I prefer this fingering for two passages that need to be light and clear, matching the surrounding passages by solo violin and piano. This is a nice, distinct fingering, but it only makes sense if one can place the thumb on B as one arrives on the high C and keeps it there for the next 8 beats. Worthy of special mention in the sequence of arpeggios is number 7, the augmented triad. With every new string, we gain a half step going up and lose one coming down. Either way, the hand contracts as the string changes and opens up on the new string. The reverse is true of number 8, the diminished 7th chord, narrow on the string, wide at string changes. To achieve a perfect left-hand legato, the hand must have all the flexibility of an octopus stretching out its tentacles. Just as I mentioned that we dare not arrive at the last page of the Rococo variations and expect to master a series of octaves right then and there, so let me tell you that I do not believe in senseless and fruitless repetition when we practice this arpeggio in the first Kabalevsky concerto. This involves, in spite of its enharmonic C sharp, basically a dominant 7th chord, which must be known as a standard configuration before one attempts to learn a composition with the difficulties of this delightfully unpretentious concerto. Toward the end of the main body of my exercises in chapter M, but close to the beginning of the daily calisthenics for the experienced player, I concern myself with increasing the strength and suppleness of the left hand toward professional standards. One has to be really smart and observant while practicing chapter M. The initial text of the chapter warns against overexertion, particularly against pressing with the thumb. The thumb constitutes a lightly guiding counter-presence below the neck, never more, when two fingers are active at the same time on top of the fingerboard. I don't think any damage can result from these exercises when we hold the lower numbered fingers down with the dead weight of the arm and concentrate on a clean lifting of the higher fingers. Don't bang the fingers down. Just let them drop inertly back into place. If you hear my fingers come down with a snap, that is the outcome of long training, not of active hitting. The inverted version at letter B is considerably more strenuous than the first one, and that much more valuable. It is all right to have a not unpleasant feeling of a special effort when one does these exercises, but the moment the hand becomes spastic, one must cease and desist right away. There are enough examples of counter motion in the cello literature to warrant the practice of letters C and D as well. Just conquer them at a very leisurely pace. Intonation is of much concern to me in these exercises. Be very conscious of the key in which you are playing and extract all possible benefit from the different spacings that are necessary for the vertical and horizontal correctness of the pitch. The training of the left hand can be carried on from the double stops in section 1 to the triple stops in section 2. Notice that, like all exercises marked with a K, these two should be played in all keys. For an easier spacing of the fingers, start, for instance, in K1 with the first finger on C instead of the printed K10 on A. Chords sounding 3 pitches simultaneously can be practiced here. We have to play them with a flat hair near the fingerboard, striking the middle one of the 3 strings involved. I want to remind you that it is not the bow grip that is energetic here, but the attack on the strings from above. Aim carefully at the contact point in the middle of the silver winding and draw the bow freely, lest the strong attack choke the string. This section also concerns itself with the flexibility of the right arm, wrist, and fingers. By breaking up the triple stops into various double and single stops, some of them look like this. One sequence leads step by step to a 3-string ricochet bowing. First, we learn to follow the curve of the bridge. Then we play with an accent on every triplet. Then only one impulse per 6 notes. By giving this motion a vertical jerk, we obtain the ricochet. I think you will find that the sequence takes you very nicely to good ricochet sextolets in the Dvorak concerto. Just keep your ears open for a clear repetition of the bass notes and an articulate shift from one sextolet to the next. The bow hold is light, but needs the presence of the 3rd finger on the stick. My 4th finger is not involved in this stroke. The following quadruple stops demand an even more pliable left hand, but I assure you that I would not discomfort you with them if they did not appear quite often in our repertoire, at least in broken form. Again, you must see for yourself which of the suggested bowings merit your attention. If practicing makes the first page of the Dvorak concerto easier, or gives your bow that nice combination of adhesion and freedom, so often necessary when bow and string changes coincide, they will have proven their worth. I follow the same pattern as in the triplets to achieve a crisp 4-string ricochet. Once more, a word of praise for the important role of the 3rd finger. It allows me to play passages like the one in the coda of the Locatelli Sonata at my preferred speed, not subject to the whims of the bow, my dear sorcerer's apprentice. Four-note chords sound really well when struck together. They are either divided 2 and 2 with a moment's dwelling on the third lowest note to allow the bow to swing out toward the 2 top notes. Or 1 and 3 when the melodic line terminates at the bottom note of the chord, as is often the case in the Bach suites, for instance, at the end of the E-flat prelude. The independence and strength of the fingers gained from the foregoing exercises ought to give us the means for healthy and even embellishments. Let us talk first of rhythmically controlled trills. In a fast tempo and on a short note, the trill is often indistinguishable from the mordent, which is a quick alternation of the main note with either its upper or lower neighboring note starting on the beat. In Mozart's Divertimento for string trio, for instance, we simply play a triplet on the beat in the allotted space of 1/16 to realize the trill. While modern usage thinks of the mordent as calling for the upper neighbor, the term mordent meant in Bach's terminology the lower neighbor. To the sign of the mordent, he attached the name triller and had it start with the upper neighbor, which alternated twice with the main note. He could therefore alternately use the letter T for trill and the sign of our mordent, his triller, in the second movement of his first gamba sonata. And the execution of both had to be as to trills played as even quintuplets, the one in the last movement of Beethoven's triple concerto sound effective that way. So does the one in the high solo in the finale of his Archduke trio. In his A major sonata, 7 even notes, including the turn, throughout the first movement, seem to me to really embellish the phrases without loss of intensity. And an excellent example of trills being truly integrated into the flow of the melody, again with 7 even notes, occurs in the last movement of Brahms' first string sextet. Trills of longer duration are most often even in articulation in a fast tempo. As C.P.E. Bach tells us, his father used to play them at twice the speed of the basic value of a movement. In other words, if you are moving along in 16ths, trill in 30 seconds. In slow movements, where a ponderously even trill would be as undesirable as a machine gun burst, an accelerating trill is often very nice, a practice already suggested by Couperin. When 2 instruments play trills of this kind in parallel motion, one has to be very careful to achieve a truly synchronized beat, or battement, as Couperin called it. I named the short electric trills ping-pong trills because the sound resembles that of a ping-pong ball being smothered by the paddle. The German term is Pralltriller, which suggests bouncing off a hard surface. I think that a rhythmic trill can be very satisfactorily developed from the exercises on pages 51 to 54, but the ping-pong trills will benefit from short bursts of energy as indicated in chapter 5 of the calisthenics. In a composition like the charming gavotte from the Valentini Sonata, one can practice the explosive little trills with the trilling finger raised high and dropping it sharply onto its place on the beat. Thereafter, it must flutter with the utmost lightness. For the development of a good trill, I recommend very highly the transcription of the Kreutzer etudes by Luigi Silva. The trill exercises with Silva's ingenious preparatory studies can be found in Book 2 of Part 1, containing the etudes numbered 14 through 27. It has been published by Ricordi as number 3176. Turns are groups of 4 notes going from the upper neighboring note of the printed pitch to the main note, then to the lower neighbor and back to the main note. When the turn is printed between 2 notes of a dotted rhythm, it will be executed as a triplet on the second rhythmic unit, the third unit being the return to the main note. For example, the beginning of Boccherini's A major sonata has the basic rhythm of as it is embellished by a turn between the second and third note, it sounds like this. All other turns between notes are played as 4 even notes whose placement will depend on the speed and character of their surroundings. When they sound too sluggish, filling out an entire beat, and too hectic when played twice as fast, it is often graceful to imagine a quintuplet whose first note is the held over principal note, the other 4 representing the turn. I like this version, for instance, in Schubert's Arpeggios sonata. A turn written above the note places the initial upper note squarely on the beat. Taste will have to determine if the music is served better by 4 even notes, which will often be the case in a fluent tempo, or if the first 3 notes should be rapid and the 4th sustained, which I prefer, for instance, in the Largo of Bach's 3rd Gamba Sonata. Mechanically, it is necessary to have the lower finger of every turn meticulously spaced as the upper finger strikes, and to aim for evenness of rhythm and sound within the fast notes. Now, why do I dwell so long on a little ornament like the turn? It is, I think, because it represents to me a word that I find again and again in the old treatises on performance practice, goût, meaning taste, meaning play according to your best sense of style. Knowledge is a wonderful thing, fundamentally necessary. It brings order out of chaos and gives us confidence in what we are doing.
But in music, knowledge guarantees nothing without taste. I can have knowledge while I lie in a hammock, but a tasteful performance demands active participation at every moment. Even a little turn requires taste to gracefully bridge diverse musical elements and fuse them into an organic whole. It symbolizes momentarily the flow and continuity that phrasing and structuring will enlarge into whole works of art. Only through the felicitous combination of all the graces, big and little, can we transform a silent musical script into a living experience, not by way of the often misunderstood and abused notion of interpretation, but through a spontaneous eloquence that is sparked by our commitment to the score in all its aspects.